All right, before we get into Elon Musk, let's talk about Le Pen, also known as Le Pen, Marine Le Pen, embezzling funds. How dare she? Sacre bleu! What the fuck is going on? Le Pen. Okay, I have a unique take on this because on the one hand, I understand why. I understand why they're doing this, and there's certainly good reason. Like it's legal, right? You can find a legal justification. If your attitude is similar to mine, where you think everyone is fucking corrupt, then you can always find corruption levers to pull to destroy your political enemies. Okay? The Democrats were too cowardly to do this to Donald Trump. They only pulled on some of the corruption levers, and Teflon Don survived it. The other side of this is the overall vibes that I worry about, which is that Macron kind of did this against Mélenchon already in different ways. He, by just outwardly refusing to go along with pre-established precedents, and you know, did everything in his power to not appoint to not appoint leadership from the winning coalition, and now he's doing it to the far right. He didn't jail or attempt to jail Mélenchon or anything like that, but you know, he's trying to manage this process to the best of his ability by using whichever legal means is in his power. And I think that this is, to a certain degree, a change in the attitude in Western liberal democracies. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm a little bit too hyperbolic. I do feel like some things are shifting.
The worst possible outcome for Marine Le Pen, her political future thrown into doubt. Visibly upset, the French far-right leader left a Paris court without waiting to hear her full sentence. A judge barred her from holding public office for 5 years, likely crushing the National Rally leader's ambitions for the next election in 2027. One of her co-accused said the verdict was a travesty.
It's the first time in 40 or 50 years that I've seen this in black and white. It's absolutely unbelievable, and we will resist.
8 other former National Rally MEPs and 12 assistants were convicted over what the prosecution called a decades-long fake job scheme in the European Parliament. They were accused of misusing more than $3 million of EU funds to finance the party in France. Le Pen served as an MEP for 13 years until 2017. Prosecutors said she oversaw the system.
During the 3 months of hearings, there was a systematic denial of what had happened in those years. And I am convinced that the court took this attitude of denial into account by saying, since you are in total denial, well, the court considers there's a risk of recidivism.
The court also handed Le Pen a 4-year prison sentence, with 2 years suspended and 2 to be served outside of jail with an electronic bracelet or under house arrest.
That's crazy.
The judge also said the ban on her...
Is hubris, in my opinion, liberalism can't defeat the far right? Yeah. I think that the bastion of liberal democracy is never the United States of America, but instead was like countries like France, Western Europe, and the liberal democratic project is so fucking done. It's so done. Am I saying that she didn't do the things that they're saying she did? Yeah, I'm not saying that at all. I'm sure that, you know, embezzlement or whatever, but it does feel like is a hollow crime for a higher purpose, and the higher purpose is to effectively remove her from the running, which is interesting because I don't even think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't even think she was supposed to be the person that's like, I mean, she's like the symbolic leader at this point, right? Isn't it supposed to be the young guy that is that would be running anyway? It's not. It's law in France if you do this kind of crimes, She was still instead of Bardella, it was going to be her running. She got 4 years for being freaking fugly with 2 years time served. How dare you, M. Hunt? I disagree. That's a beautiful lady. Okay, yowza, what a woman. Sorry, I've been reading too much Brace on Twitter. She's never going to prison, just like Sarkozy. This is a victory. However, now the right and the far right is going to try to destroy the current justice system that's already pretty favorable to right-wing politicians.
Her running for public office is effective immediately. Le Pen's lawyer said she'd appeal, but any appeal would almost certainly not be heard in time for her to run in 2 years.
It is totally, absolutely incredible. There is a form of criminalization of the defense that I personally find extremely scandalous.
Marine Le Pen has long wanted to be France's first far-right president. She's run for the Élysée 3 times.
This is low-key kind of Chinese. I'll say it. Inside of the party structure in China, there are billionaires. All billionaires are a part of the party, okay? But then there are billionaires who speak out of turn, okay? And then, if your attitude is that all billionaires, whether they're a part of the party or not, are engaging in some semblance of corruption, you just pull that corruption lever real quick and go, Chinese prosperity time. And I think this is what's going on here as well, which is, but it's instead it's being done for liberalism, at the behest of maintaining liberalism as the hegemonic as the hegemonic attitude, as a form of governance. What I mean by this is, I'm certain that like a lot of these people engage in some kind of corruption if you search deep enough. It's just that pulling this lever implies that you're doing it, I think, for a political purpose, what the Republicans would call lawfare, right? In a way that is not dissimilar to the Democratic Party. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time is an understandable position that everyone has, myself included, right? But if crime is technically legal in the sense that it's not prosecuted and you are utilizing the prosecution against people that you have seen as dangerous political enemies, why are you against prosecuting people who do crimes just because they're on a ballot? No, my point is, what do you mean pulling this lever? Macron had no way to pull any lever on this. I'm not even talking about Macron directly. I think like there's an overall attitude. The levers that Macron pulled directly was against Mélenchon. But I think that there is like an idea within the EU where they are also afraid of the growing fascist movements and they want to do everything they can to just like suppress it, which is not the worst thing. It's not the worst idea. Make no mistake. I don't think that there is I want liberals and leftists to actively resist and try to stop this kind of movement from blowing up. I fear, however, that this will be seen as lawfare because to a certain degree it is lawfare. And in that regard, it will only strengthen the opposition's position. And especially since like through one way or another, there's also similar forms of suppression or undemocratic positions that the Macron government has taken against the coalition that won the last election, that they will inevitably strengthen the right while simultaneously not strengthening the left in a way that it can combat the right. Because I truly believe the only way to oppose the growth of the reactionary movement all around Western Europe and liberal capitalist nations is through allowing socialist opposition to build momentum. Are you saying Garland and the Dems were right to do nothing about Trump? No, I'm saying that the Democratic Party going after Donald Trump, well, also, by the way, the Democrats literally did a similar thing to Donald Trump, and look where that got the... Look at the situation in America. Trump is Teflon Don. All those cases are done now. Hello? Like, that is precisely what I hope doesn't happen in France. What do they say? If you come with the king, you best not miss. You know? It's kind of like that. So I do understand why people like Yanis Varoufakis are saying this is stupid and frivolous. Yanis Varoufakis writes for Unheard, Marine Le Pen election ban is ludicrous. I think that suppressing the far right in this way without actively presenting an alternative populist left-leaning leftist socialist solution to it is only delaying the growth of the radicalized movement for a short period of time. That's what I think. And a similar situation is already taken place, but with the ideologies reversed almost, where the liberal opposition is being suppressed in Turkey by the conservative, reactionary, right-wing government. And it's also, again, with complete and utter nonsensical bullshit reasons. The notion that we are calling into question, the notion that the Erdogan administration is calling into question the authenticity of his diploma. When the motherfucker went to school, like, it's crazy. He went to school. You can see he went to school for 4 years and got his fucking diploma. It's ridiculous. Like, there are people that saw him at school, right? By saying, well, it's a constitutional provision that you have to have a real diploma, and we're forcing the administration to take away his diploma because we've decided that it was gotten through illicit means and it's fake. While simultaneously, Erdogan himself, his diploma is in dispute, and it's like a known secret basically in Turkey that he doesn't really have a real diploma. It's very funny. It's technically within the legal framework, right? But ultimately, the utilization of the law in this way is to suppress popular opposition. Do I hate that? If it was a socialist administration doing it, I wouldn't necessarily hate it all that much, because my assumption would be that a socialist administration would have also cleaned out that corruption that is ever present in every other aspect of and in all of the other parties as well. Giannis was claiming that the EU liberals are rebelling against Erdogan's persecution of Imamoglu, which is bullshit. British Labour Party didn't even make a statement. They're very happy about it. Yeah, the idea that liberal leadership is actually criticizing Erdogan is very funny. That's not real. That's not happening. That's precisely the reason why he's doing it. This is one of your worst takes, in my opinion. Wait, what? No, I don't agree with Giannis if he has said that liberal leadership is saying something about Erdogan. They are at most writing the gentlest note of all time with no pushback whatsoever. And the reasons for that is because Erdogan is playing ball on foreign policy. They have grand designs for the Middle East, and Erdogan is a very important piece of that puzzle. And he is playing along. He is playing along with the grand design that America and Western forces have alongside Israel in the region. Look at Syria. I've said it before. It was the perfect opportunity for him to completely stamp out his charismatic and very popular figurehead for the opposition movement that, if there was an election that took place tomorrow, would unseat Recep Tayyip Erdogan, right? This is precisely the reason why Western powers they're not really talking about the situation. Under different circumstances, they would be screaming bloody murder. 90 million strong wants to come into the EU, a country that's behaving in this insane autocratic way. Are you kidding me? These guys are supposed to be the bastion of liberal democracy. These are supposed to be the defenders of liberal democracy. The former well-established global order is done. It's completely fallen apart. And I think people like Yanis Varoufakis, if they genuinely think that Western liberals are criticizing Turkey, they're a little wrong. I hate to say it. Kemal Büyükyüksel says, you're absolutely right to oppose political bans on principle. Weaponizing the judiciary to eliminate political opponents is always dangerous and, as you noted, often counterproductive. But in this case, the comparison between France and Turkey is misleading. Equating the two also plays in the hands of those hoping to justify what is happening in Turkey. Le Pen had a years-long legal process with access to defense, appeals, and no pretrial detention. She is not jailed. Her sentence is open to appeal. She ran the presidential elections in the past. Imamoglu, on the other hand, was arrested in Turkey without an indictment. The charges are vague, based on classified financial documents selectively leaked to pro-government media. The judiciary, media, and security forces acted in coordination after he became the most powerful democratic opposition figure in the country. This guy is 100% correct, by the way. This is not law as the law. This is the Lula playbook. Remove the popular democratic opposition candidate through a legal facade to protect authoritarian power with the tacit approval of Western countries. So yes, we must condemn all forms of judicialized politics as counterproductive, but we must also distinguish between flawed democracies and outright authoritarianism. What happened in France deserves scrutiny. What's happening in Turkey is much darker and different. Yeah, I think that's a very good take from Kemal Büyükyüksel. Lula playbook is what was done to Lula. The Bolsonaro playbook would have been a better way to explain it. But what was done to Lula is what he is saying. Lawfare and utilization of the judicial process in a country where every single person is being corrupt to a certain degree, hyper-focusing on your political enemies and making a mountain out of a molehill, right, is precisely what happened to Lula. Ironically enough, that kind of lawfare can inevitably flip back on you for good reason, too. I think what Lula's administration has done so far against Bolsonaro is perfectly warranted, perfectly valid. I mean, because they're not going after Bolsonaro for no reason. They're going after him because he did a fucking January 6th. It was unsuccessful, but they tried it. You know? The fuck? Yeah, go into the Lulag with you. But yeah, the pragmatic take is trying to jail the leading candidate. Only embezzlement of a few million euros is not going to result in the restoration of liberal democracy and trust. No, I think it unironically is the final blow. I think it is the final blow against like when countries like Germany, say the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court and its authority in terms of serving arrest warrants will not be followed by Germany, it's over. Throw the whole court out. You know what I mean? You have said the international rule-based order is done. And this is kind of similar to that in the sense that, like, this is the final nail in the coffin of the liberal capitalist administrative state. This isn't to say that this is not a valid lawsuit. It is. But the way I see it is like, if corruption is always, if corruption is ever present across the board, then pulling on this corruption lever without much larger, much more severe claims, I think is done in a way where there will be a lot of inevitable backlash, especially when you don't pair that up with a viable coalition that is able to politically, with popular mobilization, defeat the growth of the far right. Varoufakis told Unheard that the charges against Le Pen were laughable and ludicrous, and that to make them a jailable offense, also a reason to bar her from running in the presidential election, was mind-boggling. He added, "It really worries me that the liberal establishment is doing its utmost to strengthen the appeal of the neo-fascist right in Europe. Either the law applies to everyone or applies to no one. The Economist has previously criticized the electoral ban of Romania's right-wing presidential frontrunner, Georgescu, labeling the decision preposterous. Today, he compared the ban with the RN politician's conviction, stating, the Romanian case was the dress rehearsal. Now they've moved on to Le Pen. Tomorrow, they'll go after Jean-Luc Mélenchon." Another point of comparison for Varoufakis was the ongoing political crisis in Turkey, where Recep Tayyip Erdogan's imprisonment of his main political rival, Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, has provoked widespread protests against the government. Erdogan is laughing his head off as he's watching this descent into the abyss of totalitarianism by European Union. Because how can they disabuse him of what he has done, which is exactly the same? Like İmamoğlu, Le Pen is consistently polled as the most likely winner of the next presidential election, even with her political rivals condemned today's verdict, with Eric Coquerel of the left-wing La France Insoumise saying, "I don't agree that things that should be decided by the ballot box are being decided by la court. It will only paint the National Rally as a victim." Varoufakis agreed with this assessment, posting on social media this afternoon that France's neo-fascists will only benefit from this. I do fear that they will, by the way. This will give them an opportunity to mobilize once again and claim lawfare and feel like they're being persecuted. In Somaise, my bad there. Sorry. In Somaise. Varoufakis stressed that I think Le Pen is a fascist personally. I'd like to see her be destroyed politically. At the same time, in his view, lawfare has been disproportionately waged against the outer right because the left has disappeared. The Greek politician compared Le Pen's treatment to the means used by the Democratic Party against Donald Trump, only the French are doing it in a more obvious, less defensible way than the American Democrats. Varoufakis, who attacked the attempted shutdown of the National Conservatism Conference in Brussels last year as a farcical authoritarianism. So you had the same issues with the Trump trials? No. I did not. I did not have the same issues with the Trump trials. I was actively in support of the Trump trials. Well, some of them I wasn't as on board with because I thought it was like silly shit. My biggest argument against Donald Trump or the trials that the Democrats, the Democratic DOJ implemented was that they found an incredibly narrow angle of attack against Donald Trump, where the incredible narrow angle of attack against Donald Trump was done in a way where it would not be used against, it was not precedent setting to be used against other politicians if successful, where like no other politician that's running for office is going to do paperwork shit in the same way, in the dumbest ways possible to like, you know, offer hush money to a porn star and then have that be considered a felony in the state of New York. Like these are things that you can only hit Trump on. But there were totally valid ones, like the January 6th committee, as you know, even though the liberal focus on it was like hyper specific, or no, sorry, it was hysterical. The January 6th case, which had the most motion, which is precisely the reason why they expertly fucking pushed it back to after the election, and now it's completely dropped, was unironically the one that was valid. That was valid. That was the one that had the most motion. The RICO in Georgia also, I was excited for because it was going to be televised because it's a state one. Yeah, it was a major fumble because they went, because liberals care about institutions and the preservation of institutions in the funniest ways possible. They couldn't even, you know, they couldn't even find themselves pushing for these court cases to continue, and they were able to launch a mountain of paperwork, motion after motion. The Trump side was able to do so by using those institutions against them, all the rules within the due process against them. And look where it's at now. It's gone. It's done. Having said that, I think that I don't fully agree with Yanis Varoufakis, even though I understand where he's coming from. I understand where what his worries are, which is that, you know, these are the last bastions of liberal democracy and liberal democratic principles, and I think the overall vibes are kind of fucked. Varoufakis, who attacked the attempt to shut down a National Conservatism Conference in Brussels last year as a farcical authoritarianism, highlighted a 2016 guilty verdict for Christine Lagarde on similar charges to Le Pen. Also in a French court, she kept her job as the head of the International Monetary Fund and has since become president of the European Central Bank. Nobody has made a peep about her previous conviction. Varoufakis observed today, I have zero trust in the capacity of the judiciary to act as a judiciary in France and more broadly. Yeah. LFI agrees with Yanis because Mélenchon is next, and Yanis is correct when he says Mélenchon is next. And that is part of the reason why I'm saying that these kinds of actions are I think, the center trying to figure out any way to maintain its power. If centrist liberals truly cared about destroying the right-wing shift in their own countries, if they truly cared about combating fascism, they would not try to strong arm the left populist momentum in the same exact ways or in different ways, like in the way that Macron did. So while on the one hand, fuck yeah, put the fascist in jail. It's awesome. On the other hand, I still worry that this will galvanize the opposition and only feed into that momentum. And we'll see. We'll see what takes place. Yeah, the far right wouldn't hesitate to join with the right to target the left. We should destroy the right when we can. There's no solidarity with fascists. No, I agree. I agree with you. I'm saying that, like, on its face, this is great. I'm thinking in long term. I think in the long term, this is not great. And I think this in the long term, it will blow back in the same ways that the Democratic Party's lack of momentum against lawfare against Recep Tayyip Trump-Doan was I mean, we know what happened there. I mean, look, he's the fucking president now and he's ripping apart everything.
Times and twice been runner-up to Emmanuel Macron, but President Macron cannot run again. And for many supporters, they believe that 2027 was going to be Le Pen's moment.
You are fuming. Justice is independent in France. Corruption gets punished. Sarkozy was convinced as well. Convicted, you mean? Yeah.
And so did she. At National Rally headquarters, Le Pen and party members.
If they had put Trump in prison in 2022, he wouldn't have been president today. Yeah, no, that's my point. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You come with the king, you best not miss. Because if you fumble it, you're fucked. That's my argument. That's precisely what I'm saying. That's the point.
Members gathered, including her most likely.
Actually, America's different because, like, you could still run from jail. I think Americans are far too. Americans would have been, they're not voting for a dude in jail, though. I don't think in the numbers necessary to win an election.
Successor Jordan Bardella.
But you can still run from prison in the United States of America, for the record. You can't in France, I guess, or if you're jailed, you can't run for president. But
at 29, Bardella is far from having the experience and stature of his mentor, but he is untainted by a trial that has shaken his party and severely damaged one of France's most famous politicians. Natasha Butler, Al Jazeera, Paris.
Well, leaders in France and abroad have been reacting to Le Pen's ban. The left-wing leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon says the decision to remove a political leader should be up to voters. Laurent Wauquiez of France's right-wing Republicans says it's not healthy in a democracy to stop an elected official from standing in elections. Right-wing leaders abroad have also criticised the move. Hungary's President Viktor Orban expressed his support for Le Pen.
I am Marine. Okay, put her in extra jail. Never mind. I take it back. I take back everything. Put this motherfucker in jail too. When's he gonna get his, you know? Today I am Marine. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Pen on the social media platform X with the words, "I am Marine."
God, fucking soy right is so real. Soy right, dude. The new battle lines are being drawn against dark woke forces against the soy right.
Philippe Deveul is an attorney. He says the
it's all computer. I am Marine.
ban on Le Pen running for public office for 5 years is anti-democratic.
The problem with the execution provisoire, provisory execution, if I can translate in English, that even if she makes this appeal, she can run for any kind of election in France, to the parliament or even to the presidential election coming soon in 2027. That is the most difficult point of this judgment, of this verdict of the court. And I think it's a kind of injury of the French democracy, because there is a fight by this decision. There is a fight between the authority of the justice and between the popular sovereignty. The popular sovereignty, it's the decision of the people by election. I think the people will join more the national rally or all the party which are contesting the system. And I think it's the starting of a kind of a political revolution, this decision. It's not a little thing. It's a very important starting for what is going. It's called the agenda, political agenda in France, and we can see that a lot of politicians, even from left side, are criticizing this decision.
Also, people that point to Sarkozy, maybe I'm wrong about this, but wasn't the Sarkozy trial after? It wasn't a way to impede him from running again. Sarkozy. Yeah. So that's it's like still ongoing. So it did impede him. No, I'm saying like he was already done. It was over. Like his political ambitions were gone anyway. It's more so that like it was a prosecution. It was a prosecution that was conducted not in an effort, not at a time when like he has political momentum, but instead after. Yeah, it's more so consequences. I mean, you could say the same thing about Le Pen too. I just don't think it's a correct comparison. Marine lost 3 times in a row. She should be over. She's grown in popularity every single time, so it's not over until it's completely over. DSK was blocked for being a sexual criminal. He was the favorite candidate for presidency before Hollande. If you have this opinion, then the issue is not the decision, it is the law that they voted. What? I don't believe the judiciary system is controlled by Macronists. It gets nothing to Macron. Le Pen has already stepped back from political prominence. Then again, I get it that it may have been an overzealous move by liberal established prosecutors and judges. Yeah, no, I think that's what it is. I think a lot of people are genuinely, understandably terrified. Liberals are legitimately worried about the growth of fascists in Europe, and they're trying to do whatever the fuck they can because they look at Trump. I think what's going on is they look to America, they saw what the fuck the Democrats did and how they flubbed it, and they're like, we can't let that happen here, so we got to move now. And I worry that because liberals ultimately still push for process and their procedure perverts, that might end up with the lawfare that they're doing failing spectacularly. Having said that, I don't know what kind of motion the nationalists have outside of Le Pen. Like, she's seen as like a singular figure that you can rally around, but whoever replaces her, if this is successful, might not be as well established. So we shall see. They use the term illiberalism, unliberalism now in Europe when they talk about Trump and co., which is interesting. She was the one advocating pretty vocally for this kind of sentence for politicians committing fraud. No, I understand all of that, okay? It's not a move now thing. It's a 10-year-old procedure that Le Pen herself did everything to delay. Wait, the court case was established 10 years ago? Like they've been investigating for 10 years and only now they have enough evidence? Apparently she also walked out of the court case before they sentenced her or something. Mélenchon is wise to take a stance against this. He can peel off some of Le Pen's supporters. Well, I think also Mélenchon is worried about a similar thing happening to him. And every party in France has the same court case as their ass. I worry that a similar thing will happen to him as well. When ironically enough, if liberals were truly smart about whether it's the independent judiciary or whether it is Macron, if they truly cared about destroying, if they truly cared about not preserving the capitalist status quo and preserving liberal democracy as it stands, but instead utilizing the popular mobilization and the momentum that people have on the left side of the ticket, further left than Macron, they would unleash that momentum upon the French population while simultaneously doing everything in their power to fucking suppress the far right. My fear is that they won't do that, and there will be even more there will be even more mobilization against it, against the center in general, and the far right will inevitably win. That's my fear. I don't know if that's the case, but directionally, in terms of policy, Macron himself has moved to the right and tried to adopt a lot of the right-wing populist messaging, whether it is because he is personally a racist piece of shit, which I do think he is, that for the record, or because he cynically thinks that this will allow him to capture the attention of the far right, which has been able to develop its base and grow in power. So we'll see. We'll see where this goes. But Godspeed. Because I think fascism is ultimately something beyond the normal permissible boundaries of liberal democracy. Just like socialism is, okay? Not on a moral equivalency shit here, but I'm saying that, like, fascism, while directionally is restoring the capitalist the capitalist order, it's still completely outside of that, the boundaries of protecting liberal values that on paper, in theory, that like liberals are supposed to care about, because it's an exterminationist policy inherently. That's what it is at its heart. It's not about fixing the economy or anything like that. It's about a rigid application of law and order in an effort to combat any kind of movement against the decaying material conditions and against the instability born out of liberal capitalism. So for that reason, for that purpose, I am truly fearful of the growth of fascist movements all around Europe, alongside the obvious capture of power here in the United States of America. And therefore, I think you got to do everything you can to combat the growth of fascism in every country, including the pre-existing judiciary, if that's what it takes. But without any sort of alternative, Rob Rousseau, thank you for the raid. Hope you had a good stream. Without any sort of alternative set in place, liberalism is not going to be able to thrive. Liberalism is not going, like, you can't have an authoritarian liberal governance and think that, you know, as long as the liberals are the ones doing the far right policies, like, we'll be fine because they still care about the core process. Like, that is destined for failure. That is destined for an inevitable fascist authoritarian to take over. That is what has happened throughout history. Like, you can't do fucking, you can't do woke fascism, okay? It's fucking stupid. I mean, look at Israel. Yeah, if you want to understand what, like, liberal authoritarianism has gotten a country, a nation state, especially with, like, a very active, very much alive, constant group of people that must be exterminated at all costs, Israel.